drug crisis all across the country. And in my district and with communities of color, we get it, and we've been victimized by that for many, many years. Let me just say to you that our whole state of California is a state that values immigrants and their contributions to our society. These are not criminals coming across the border. These are people coming across the border to seek a better life for themselves and their families. Of course, we're going to go after the criminals and the drug dealers and the bad people who should not come to the country. But this does not mean that we have to stop immigration. We need a comprehensive strategy to make sure that we adhere to our values in our country, while at the same time ensuring that these criminal cartels and these people who are doing drug dealing and providing the opening for others to engage in criminal activity, that is stopped. That's an effort that our police and our national security people, yes, should address, but we cannot stop immigration, because that is not the majority of people who want to come to this country.
The president, in one of his tweets this morning, talked about the border wall, saying it started in San Diego, where the people were pushing really hard to get it. They will soon be protected. You're on the Appropriations Committee. Some funding for wall and border security in the latest negotiation. What was that to the tune of? How much was in the bill for it?
In the bill, which I didn't support, I think it was a little over $1 billion, maybe 1.8. But I have to say that when you talk about border security, I support border security in a big way, but I don't support building walls. We need to look at technology. We need to look at where we need enhanced security measures, but a wall between us and the country of Mexico does not make any sense, and it's not going to help in terms of illegal immigration.
Houston, Texas is next. Hattie, line for Democrats. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? Sister Beverly, I'm just so proud of you all, as a Democrat. You always stands up for the right. And I am looking very, very of this, about, these different criminals, coming over and everything. But they need to start to looking at, first of all, our President of the United States to stop, he's banging with the criminals, like Russia and all this stuff. We got to do that too. My husband was a Vietnam veteran, and he served his country very well. And with the border and everything like that, he wouldn't mind doing that. But innocent people's coming over here when they was babies and everything. That's not right. And the building a wall, taking all that money when he can take this money to help with, stop these drug dealers and stop this, these opening and all this stuff coming over. That's what he needs to do, instead of building a wall and putting our soldiers there in danger and everything right there.
Got your point, Hattie. Congresswoman.
Thank you very much, Hattie, and thank your husband and yourself for your service to our country. And I think we could better spend our tax dollars by helping our veterans with their health care, with access to jobs and economic security. We need to build affordable housing. We need to strengthen our public education system. We need to provide for infrastructure needs and create good paying jobs and living wages and a better life for everyone. And we can better use our resources at the same time protecting our borders and enhancing our national security efforts. But building a wall is a waste of money. So thank you.
Matt Smith on tweeting out, Barbara Lee for president. Would you ever run for that job?
Barbara Lee would not run for president.
Back to California, Mike, Laguna Woods, line for independence. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Congresswoman. First of all, thank you for an exemplary act of principle and conscience. You're reliably so. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'd like to quote George Kennan, who is a famous Secretary of State who formulated the containment policy in the wake of World War II, which served us extremely well. He quoted John Quincy Adams in his opposition to the Vietnam War. Adams said, "America does not go abroad in search for monsters to destroy. It is a well-wisher of freedom and independence of all. She is a champion and vindicator only of her own. which actually lays out three key principles. America is not the world's policeman, number one. Two, America is the shining city on the hill. That is, free Americans provide an example to the world's citizens about what's possible in a free country. And finally, the American government protects the rights only of the American people. May I have your comment, please?
Sure. I think that, and thank you very much for your gracious comments, but I also think America is that shining light, and because on the hill, and because of that, we have a responsibility to lead, and lead in a way that brings our country and our world together. We're global leaders. We should set an example. We have, or we had, three pillars of our foreign policy: development, diplomacy, and defense. And I think we need to show that diplomacy and development really will help lift everyone out of poverty throughout the world, but also will help our own country in creating jobs and creating a better life for everyone. And so I think we have a responsibility, because we are a wealthy, the wealthiest and the most powerful in the world, country in the world, to help others, because famine, poverty, hunger, the lack of education, the lack of clean water, we have so many issues that we need to address in our own country and throughout the world. And by working with people in other countries, we can learn from them and they can learn from us. And I think we need to take the lead, and we did have the lead under President Obama in making sure that we were on a track to global peace and security.
Back to this discussion of authorizations of use of military force. Longtooth on Twitter says, Representative Lee, you forgot to mention Obama and Hillary Rodham Clinton misusing presidential power to attack Libya. How'd you feel about that?
I was very much opposed to the use of force as it relates to Libya and any other country during President Obama's administration. In fact, in many ways, and I believe I talked about that here, that I did not support that. We organized around that, and we let the president know that we believed that he should come to Congress for an authorization if, in fact, he were going to use force in Libya. And Libya is a mess now, and I think that the American people deserve to know the costs and consequences of putting our young men and women in harm's way. They do everything we ask them to do, so we honor our servicemen and women. But they need to know that Congress gets it and it has their back, and we should have debated and voted for that or not.
Take us back 17 years ago to the debate over the authorization of use of force after the 9/11 attacks. You were a vote against that authorization. Were you the only vote against it?
I was the only vote against that. It was a 60-word resolution that was very broad. It did not specify Afghanistan, first of all. It just said the president is authorized to use force against those responsible for 9/11 associated forces, any nation, individual. I'm paraphrasing it now, but it was presented 3 days after the horrific attacks. I mean, everyone was angry. I was. My chief of staff's cousin, Wanda Green, she was a flight attendant on Flight 93. I was in the Capitol, had to evacuate. So it hit very personally for me, but the families and friends of those who were killed throughout the country, I tell you, it's still, is still sad, and we still mourn their loss. And so this was a time when members of Congress were angry, did not know what had taken place, but determined to do something. But I said then, as I say now, that we had to step back as leaders and really debate and understand what was going on, be rational about our response, because people elect us to be rational, and come up with an appropriate response. But 3 days later, while people are in a state of mourning, while our country is in a state of mourning, that was not the time to debate an authorization to use force, because it was a rush to judgment. And I said then that I thought it would spiral out of control, and let us be more thoughtful about our response before we respond.
Dan's here in Washington, D.C., a Republican. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for C-SPAN, and thank you for taking my call. Really quickly, the previous caller who quoted John Quincy Adams, the U.S. responsibilities in the 18th century were vastly different than they are today, certainly before World War II happened, and that was even before the Monroe Doctrine. So I'm not sure that that's the appropriate use of that quote. Getting to